All right, number 2 is the Ray Lewis Ravens. And if anybody remembers the Ray Lewis Ravens, I know I'm aging myself, but just stick with me here. The Ray Lewis Ravens, basically the way that works here is the nose tackle was Sam Adams, and then the defensive tackle was Tony Siragusa. So it was 340 and 350 right next to each other. What is up, everybody? It is Jake back with the MF Film Room. Thank you so much for being here. If you want to be up to date on all things EA college football, hit that red subscribe button, hit the like button, and follow me on Twitter and Instagram. If you like college football content, go subscribe to my other channel, Master Football with Jake Posey. Link is in the description. But enough about all that EA college football content. Let's go. All right, guys, happy Monday here after the holiday season, and I wanted to make sure that we check back in with our progression here. I had the videos previously in terms of the different archetypes and kind of ranking them for all the position groups. Now what I'm doing is I'm going through all the defenses. I will eventually get to the offenses. The offenses are going to be, crazy. There's a reason why there's 136 offenses plus all the stock offenses and this and that. However, for defenses, there's only so many things that you can do there. So what I wanted to do here is go through the next step here. I originally did the 3-3-5 last Monday. I was going to do the 3-3-5 tight this Monday. However, I got a special request, and I'm here to listen to the people, man. I took a snip here from my comments, and Miles 5253 said he wanted 4-2-5 next. And I'm like, you know what, Miles? I was going to do 3-3-5. I was going to do 3-3-5 tight, and then 3-2-6, and da-da-da. I will eventually get to those, but we're doing 4-2-5 next. So what we're going to do is go over the 4-2-5 defense. If you guys have ever been here before, you know we got to go through our chapters. So we're going to go through our asterisk, then we're going to go through our philosophy, kind of the core elements, strengths and weaknesses of this defense, then the different formations. We have the 4-2-5, otherwise known as the big nickel. The big nickel will show up here more often than you think. Then the 3-3-5 defense in there as well, and then nickel and dime. Then we're going to go through the position group archetypes to recruit here. Defensive line and linebackers and defensive backs. I also want to make sure we're clear about this. This is a little bit more flexible of a defense here as opposed to the 3-3-5. So you're going to include multiple different strategies for defensive line, not necessarily for the linebackers and the DBs. The linebackers and the DBs have a little bit more stock here. The defensive line, you actually can do a couple different things. I want to though make sure I go over the philosophy of that so you can understand what the design was. But the cool thing about this, it is a video game. You can kind of do what you want. But again, you know how we do it here. We got to start off with our asterisk. So that last point about having multiple different versions of the defensive line, you can do kind of anything you want to here. And this whole asterisk is about that. A good enough player at an archetype I do not name can still work, especially with the higher dev traits, because I'm telling you, if you have a pure power D end, but he's got, elite dev trait, he can get himself amazing amounts of power moves and amazing amounts of speed as opposed to, standard pure powers that don't. Again, if you have a disagreement here, get in the comments and let me know why. Tell us all why. We're all here to make each other better. But without further ado, let's start off on our philosophy. So I've been using footballtimes.org. It has been great when you're talking about the history, talking about where it comes from, talking about the idea, the strategies here and there. You can see all this stuff. I'm going to include this link in the description here so you can kind of see what the design was here. So it talks about kind of where it came from, why the 4-2-5 is the true hybrid defense. It's designed to stop modern offenses. It's very effective versus RPOs, spread offenses. You can stay in base for all 4 downs. It's really, really dominant in that respect there. It also talks about kind of what it is, what it's designed for, what you want the structure of it to be, how you want players to be here and there, what are the strengths and weaknesses. One of the things I like about this defense especially is as much as the 3-3-5 that I went over previously emphasizes defensive speed on the back end, this one emphasizes defensive speed basically everywhere. And it's totally encapsulated in this sentence right here. If you ever have a choice to put more speed versus size on the field on defense, choose speed. That's what this defense is all about. And I want to make sure I give a shout out here to my boy Mills. Mills is awesome. You got in my comment section a couple of videos that I have. I actually used some of his video here to kind of go through the different archetypes here. I'm going to include this link in the description as well. Again, if you guys don't know who Mills is, if you don't follow me, if you're like, you know what, dude, at Master Football, you suck. I don't want to listen to you at all. Go listen to Mills. He will make sure you are in the right direction. So talking about those core elements, and number one, I know I mentioned the 3-3-5. I know I said, oh, it's all about speed on the back end, and it is to a degree. However, there's a lot of areas where you're going to have a lot of size to make up for that speed or to allow that speed to kind of flow. This one, it's speed all over the place. When in doubt, choose speed at your positions everywhere across the board. We have some deviations from that on this for my suggestions here, but for the most part, I'll tell you what my favorite thing is, and again, my favorite defense is mostly just speed. You need to have your star / your rover strong safety. So what it is that that of the 5 on the back end, there's 2 corners, 2 strong safeties, or a strong safety and a free safety, and then kind of your box safety. Your box safety needs to be your freakazoid. I mentioned it before. He needs to be Kyle Hamilton. He needs to be Nick Eamon-Warry from the Seahawks. He needs to be, Derwin James from the Chargers. That's the kind of guy who can play in the slot. He can blitz. He can cover. He can drop deep. He can drop short. He can do it all. That's what you need that guy to be. And the cool thing about this is that it also has a good amount of blitz, but you will rush, kind of rush for plenty. So whereas the 3-3-5, a lot of times you're going to drop 8 or you'll have to design some sort of blitz. This one right here, it has those 4 rushers, so you don't have to worry about kind of calling that. Now, for the strengths and weaknesses of this defense, I said for the strengths, it actually has more speed than the 3-3-5. I know you're, what are you talking about? The other one's got, 3 linebackers, and linebackers are faster than the defensive linemen. However, the defensive linemen that are on the field are, for the 3-3-5, are much slower than the defensive linemen on the field for the 4-2-5. 4-2-5, you're going to have true defensive ends, you're going to have defensive tackles, a nose tackle, and you're going to have a 3 technique who is that upfield penetrator, a la like Warren Sapp, Aaron Donald type of player. So for that, you're going to have more speed on the field in general. You also can stay in base defense for all 4 downs. Whereas when I feel like for the 3-3-5, if somebody lines up in 5 wide, you can open up the umbrella. But I don't like linebackers in space guarding a bunch of really fast receivers. Whereas for this one, you're going to have, those 4 down lines when rushing. You'll be able to roll a safety down. I actually like this one a little bit more against kind of like an empty formation. And you also don't have to design pass rush. You mostly just rush for, again, there are blitzes on this one. It actually has a fair amount of blitz in this. But again, you mostly just rush for, so you don't have to design that and put it into the game. Some of the weaknesses, though, again, if you have a play against an offense that's got good 12 personnel, good 21 personnel, good 22 personnel, 13 personnel, and for those of you guys who don't know, it's basically running back and then tight end. So 12 is 1 running back, 2 tight ends. 21 is 2 running backs, 1 tight end. 22 is 2 running backs, 2 tight ends. 13 is 1 running back, 3 tight ends. Kind of goes like that. So if they put on an excessive amount of size on the field, you might have to adjust with this here. Also with this, because of how much back-end speed you have, you're going to have a lot of misdirection that could hurt this defense, getting people out of place there. And then also you need to have that star / rover strong safety, or you're going to have issues. If you put a guy out there in the kind of that little slot area and he's not a freakazoid athlete who can take on blockers, who can take on receivers, you're going to have absolute problems with this. All right, going over the different formations here, I want to make sure, and again, screenshot any of these if you guys need to. So we have 4-2-5 over G, and 4-2-5 over G basically puts the nose tackle. So if you think about this here, this is going to have your nose tackle on the field. In addition to, and this is where it gets a little weird, you're going to have your sub linebackers on the field for your base defense. So you need to make sure that if you want to play the same guys, you have to start them at linebacker and start them at sub. Otherwise, you could have different guys on the field. But for the over G, you're going to have your nose tackle on the back side of the defense. This defense right here kind of protects that defensive tackle number 1. So if that defensive tackle number 1 is a guy who's an upfield penetrator and might be able to get a little susceptible to the run, he's going to have a left end and a strong safety on one side and a nose on the other. He'll have some help there. You're also going to have 4-2-5 under, where for the under, the nose tackle is going to be on the strong side of the field. So if they run heavy to the strong side of the field, you want your nose tackle on that side, go ahead and go with this defense. And for the 3-3-5 penny, so there is a 3-3-5 on in the standard playbook for the 4-2-5. It's the penny. I actually love the penny. Penny is great because you're just bringing so much dang pressure. It is absolutely awesome. It also takes a ton of pressure off of that nose tackle to be that big run stuffer. He can be, but for the most part, he's got 2 tackles on both sides. He's got ends on the other sides of him. He's got a lot of help, so he doesn't have to hold the entire offensive line down. We also have your overflex, which, if we're being honest here, is basically very similar to the 4-2-5. It just looks like, it's just called this in general, though. It's still right end, left end, defensive tackle. It's very similar to the under formation that we went over in just a second. Getting into the nickels, we have standard issue nickel over. And the cool thing here is you're going to have your just standard issue slot corner as opposed to your strong safety. Your strong safety kicks back. Then your 3-3 mint, and for your nickel 3-3 mint, 3 defensive tackles, 1 end, 1 rush end, and then a slot corner. So very, very cool blitz, a heavy blitzing formation here with lots of size as well. Everybody knows about double mug. It's got double mug, and I know you guys could tell the difference there between all of those there. So that's your double mug. It also has your nickel load, where you're going to load to that weak side of the field, and then you're going to have that sub linebacker 2 is going to be protected by those 3 defensive linemen kind of all in front of him. Then you're going to have your load mug, where your sub linebacker 2 is going to be in the gap there, and then your sub linebacker 1 is going to be protected by rush defensive tackle 2, 1, and then that rush right end. And then you have your nickel single mug where your sub linebacker 1's going to be over the center. Sub linebacker 2 is going to be behind right rush defensive tackle number 1. And then finally, you end off with your dime normal. And then last but not least, your dime rush, where they basically just screwed out a little bit wider. All right, before we get into the different archetypes to recruit, I want to make sure I set the precedent here. So with an extreme defense, and what I mean by extreme is that this is a very, very extreme look. This is technically a run-stopping formation in a lot of ways. That's strong safety, by the way. Strong safety 1, more often than not, is going to be flying up and defending against the run here. But in order to do something this extreme, where you have this type of, extreme variation of defense here, you only can really have a gap specialist nose tackle. You might be able to have a pure power, but for the most time, you're going to have a gap specialist in there. But the thing about the 4-2-5 is the way that it is, you kind of have the ability, you've got a little bit of protection here and there. So thinking about this here, that nose tackle, and if you look at the nose tackle on these different formations in this playbook, so he's got the protection of an end, a linebacker, 2 linebackers behind him, a defensive tackle, a right end, and then a strong safety on one side. So he's really, really insulated in this defense. He's a little bit by himself on this defense. This is more insulating that defensive tackle number 1, but at the same time, he's still got plenty of people to support him here. Kind of the same thing with this 3-3-5 over flex. He's got lots of people that back there to support him. And then the 3-3-5 penny, I mean, he's got a whole line in front of him. He's going to have one-on-one blocks the entire game. This right here, like I said, for a nose tackle in this defense, it's not as imperative that he is a gap specialist. You probably should in a lot of ways, but it's not as imperative as you would think. So what I've done is I've gone through the different archetypes here for the defensive line, and I've actually created a couple packages here. So it all depends on what you want to do. Again, the cool thing about the 4-2-5 is it's a little bit more flexible, whereas for the 3-3-5, you can only really have a gap specialist nose tackle. You've got some different options here for the 4-2-5. So for this one here, I've got the first package here. I call this different variation the no-run zone. So this is a nose tackle, it's a gap specialist. The DTs are gap specialists, and then the edge setters are the edges. So that one right there, you're going to be blitzing on this one. You probably still need to blitz with this one. But because the cool thing about the 4-2-5, a lot of times that strong safety is going to be blitzing off the edge there. You get yourself a gap specialist, and some edge setters, and then you blitz to create pressure. I don't hate this, but I feel like it's not as optimal as you could have. But again, this is one option you could have there. All right, number 2 is the Ray Lewis Ravens. And if anybody remembers the Ray Lewis Ravens, I know I'm aging myself, but just stick with me here. The Ray Lewis Ravens, basically the way that works here is the nose tackle was Sam Adams, and then the defensive tackle was Tony Siragusa. So it was 340 and 350 right next to each other, 340 or 350 and 340 respectively, excuse me. So for those guys, you're going to have those gap specialists in the middle there. But then on the outside, you're going to have your power rushers and your speed rushers. Those are the guys who are going to be creating those pressure. You don't have to blitz as much on that defense because you've got that edge pressure. But this one, you're trying to stop the run up the middle, and you're trying to force some pass rush around the outside. That's what the Ray Lewis defense package is. Defensive line variation number 2. All right, this one right here, number 3, I call this one the Dan Quinn. And the reason why I call it the Dan Quinn was because Dan Quinn, who is the head coach for the Cowboys, I think for the Commanders, he's been the head coach a couple different spots for the Falcons at one time. I think he actually was the defensive coordinator at the Falcons. And when he was there, he basically said, I will pick speed over size at every single position on the field other than nose tackle. So basically what he's saying is I want speed, I want flowing, I want toughness, I want people to be flying all around the field. You get yourself that nose, you get that gap specialist nose who can kind of hold it down, but everybody else is trying to get to the passer. That's what they're trying to do here. That's what I call this number 3 package, which is the Dan Quinn. All right, this one is similar to the no-run zone, which this one is called the blitz package. And the reason why I call this one the blitz package is because it's a little bit different. So your nose tackle is going to be there as your gap specialist. You could also have a pure power. Pure powers, I actually love pure power defensive tackles because they have pass rush abilities and run stopping abilities. They have inside disruptor. They have pocket disruptor. They have both of those. So you can put one of those guys at nose tackle. You can also put them at regular defensive tackle. And then for the edge setters there, those are the guys who are going to basically be establishing the edge there. So you're going to have guys with inside disruptor, guys with outside disruptor on the outside. But then you're still probably going to have to blitz with this package. Again, it all just depends on who you get here. I'm not as in love with this one. I actually would rather just go with a bunch of gap specialists and edge setters and then just create some blitzes from there. I don't hate, though, the pure power guys on the inside. And then last but not least here, we have the defensive line archetype group number 5, which I call the Peyton Manning Colts. So the Peyton Manning Colts, the way that they were here, this was, Booger McFarland is going to be your nose tackle. He's going to be your pure power, aka your power rusher up the middle there. Your defensive tackles are going to be Raheem Brock. Raheem Brock is his old school name. He was like 275 as a pass rushing DT. And then you got your edges, which is Robert Mathis and Dwight Freeney. So this one right here, you are absolutely trying to attack and get after the passer. I think that this one, if you're arguing for the 4-2-5 defense, I think this one might actually be the most appropriate. I would probably go with my favorite would be the Dan Quinn, but I think this one right here, this is not a bad option as well. All right, so for the defensive line, you can do many different things for the defensive line. Now, for the linebackers, that's a little bit more, less variance here because they're asked to do particular things. So for your Mike, aka your sub linebacker one, remember here, for your 4-2-5, your big nickels, you're going to have your sub linebackers on the field. So you want to make sure that your Mike and your Will, or if you have your Sam, it doesn't really hurt my feelings, but I know that for your over flex in the 3-3-5, it is your Mike and your Will. So you want to make sure that if you want the same guys, you're going to have the same guys as your subs. So make sure here that your Mike, he's going to be asked to do a lot here. So if you look at what he's doing, he's going to blitz, he's going to cover short, he's going to cover deep in Tampa zone, and he's going to be in man coverage. I would want a signal caller. The reason being is because signal callers, when they have the only blitzing ability there, which is that takedown ability, and then they're also going to have workhorse. So whereas the Thumper is going to have aftershock, their ability to wear and tear the other team. Workhorse is his ability to stay on the field for himself. Checking out what they do, you can see it in the plays. So you're looking at those two linebackers. You have the linebacker on the right. That is going to be your Mike backer. So if you think about that, he's going to have your zone. He's going to blitz. He's going to have your zone. You're going to be zoned but by himself over there. You're going to have a zone. He's going to be in a deep zone there. So he's going to have that Tampa zone. He's going to be zoned again. He's going to be in man. He's going to be zoned again. He's going to be zoned again. He's going to be that Tampa zone. He's going to be blitzing. He's going to be man coverage. He's going to be man coverage. He's going to be man coverage, zone coverage, man coverage, zone coverage, zone coverage, zone coverage, and then zone coverage as well. And then we get over to the under formation. He's going to be zone, blitz, Tampa zone, man coverage, zone, Tampa zone, blitz, Tampa zone, man coverage, blitz, man coverage, and then zone. So he's going to do a lot. Oh, I forgot one more. And then man coverage. He has to do everything. So I'm thinking a signal caller for him. Like I said before, they've got those pass rush abilities, the pass rush ability. They also have that ability to stay on the field for a long time. You want to have a good Mike. This is important in this defense. And then for the Will or the sub linebacker 2, what you want to hear is you're going to be playing a lot more in space than the Mike. You're going to have a lot more of those curl flat, seam flat zones, aka the purple zones. I'll let you guys know. I had to Google that. I'm an old school guy. Everybody has their things they do. I just call those zones the purple zones. You're also going to blitz. You're going to cover short, and you're going to be in man coverage. That's why I think you need to get yourself a lurker in this instance. Again, speed over size for this defense, especially on the back end. And I also like myself an athlete thumper linebacker switch to the Will position. He'll likely be a lurker after the switch. He might be a signal caller too, but you want a lot of speed because this guy's going to be in a ton of zone coverage. Check this out. So now you're checking that weak side linebacker. So the linebacker right here is the yellow zone just to the left of the middle linebacker. So he's got that yellow zone. He's got to go out there to the hook curl. He's got a hook curl. He's blitzing. He's got hook curl. He's got a yellow zone. He's got a hook curl. He's got a yellowish zone. He's got the yellow zone. He's got a man coverage. He's got a yellow zone. He's got a hook curl. He's got the yellow zone. He's got a yellow zone as well. He's got man coverage. He's got a blitz. He's got a man coverage. He's got a yellow zone. He's got the hook curl zone. He's got the yellow zone in the cover one hole. So I want that guy. Again, if that guy's a lurker, he can move around a lot. He's going to have the yellow zone there. He's going to be a yellow zone. He's going to be the hook curl. And then he's going to be yellow zone. Getting over to the under formation. He's got the hook curl, blitz, yellow zone, hook curl, yellow zone, yellow, man coverage, blitz, and then yellow zone. And then also one last one, he's got man coverage. So this guy, he's going to be a little bit more out in space than the signal caller, which is why I want a lurker out there patrolling those areas. Once we get to the DBs, now it's going to be a little bit different here. For the 3-3-5, you're going to have more of those zone coverage guys. But for these corners in the 4-2-5, there's going to be a lot more man coverage. So with the fact that it's more man coverage, but still a good amount of zone, you're going to want a field corner. A field corner is going to be a guy. They're not the best athletes out of the corners. I feel like the boundaries are the strongest. The man-to-mans are the fastest. The zone coverage are kind of second and second to both of those. The fields aren't very good athletes, but they are dynamic. They're very good technicians in coverage there. They also have the robber ability, better zone coverage movement, and then they have the blanket coverage ability, which is better man coverage. The only corner with an exclusively man and an exclusively zone different ability there. Talking about the free safety, you want to have a deep middle they're going to be deep middle or they're going to be split safety most of the time. So get yourself a coverage specialist. They're going to be back there deep. You could always go with a hybrid. I don't mind having a hybrid. Again, having the whole defense be able to help and run support is something that's good. You could also have a box specialist, but I would not have a box specialist. I want a coverage specialist back there. That's what they're asked to do. That's what I want back there. Then for the strong safety, same thing as the 3-3-5. You're going to need a superhero, especially for the one that is up in the box. Again, he's going to be blitzing. He's going to be in man coverage. He's going to be in zone coverage. He's going to be guarding the flats. He's going to guard deep. He could potentially have that Tampa zone. He's going to have to be all over the field. You need a freakazoid athlete, somebody who's big, strong, and fast. A thumper athlete, I am telling you. Thumper athletes, go ahead and go there, get them and switch them over. They will switch to a box specialist most likely. They'll occasionally switch to a coverage specialist. And the fact that they switch to a coverage specialist, they might not be able to train up some of those things like block shedding here or there, but they're still going to be just fine, even if they only have those coverage specialist abilities with the stock abilities and ratings of a athlete thumper linebacker. But then I would not do a box specialist behind that. I would do, if I couldn't be an athlete thumper linebacker, I choose a hybrid because you want speed, and they are much faster and they're much more apt to getting in the box than a coverage specialist would, a pure coverage specialist. All right, guys, I actually had a lot of fun with that one, especially the creativity and kind of thinking like the different types of archetypes that you can have out there, especially the defensive line. Dude, you could do kind of whatever you want with the defensive line. Again, because of how flexible the defense is, you've got more players have more support. You don't have to have one guy who does one thing, an A+. You can have a couple of Bs on the field. You can have a couple C+. It's a little bit more flexible like that. But you guys get in the comments. Let me know what you guys think. Also, make sure to check out that blog and check out Mills' videos. Mills has some awesome videos there. Go check him out. And get in the comments. What do you guys like to do with your defense? You guys let us all know. All right, guys, that's it. Thank you so much for being here. Please like, share, comment, subscribe. Do all that stuff. I really appreciate it. That's it for me, guys. I'll see you guys later. I am out.